Well, thanks so much for rearranging the program. I really appreciate it. And it's really great to see all of you here. What we heard on the previous panels about the damages from cell phones and how we need to regulate those more for young people. But I want to ask you, how many of you have navigation systems on your cell phones? There you go. How many of you trade stocks? Any of you trade stocks? None of you trade stocks. Well, that's great. I'm an economist. I recommend mutual funds. But some people do trade stocks on their phones daily. Many people use these cell phones ubiquitously for good reasons, not for bad reasons, as we heard earlier. And the question is, what if these navigation systems go out? When I get into an Uber, I often ask the Uber driver, I say, what would you do if your navigation system went out? And then he usually says to me, well, it doesn't matter because I have it on my cell phone. Well, few people know that the navigation systems that we have are dependent on a system of 32 satellites up in the air. This is a national security conference, and we should be focused on the fact that these satellites can be taken down through Russian or Chinese interference, and they can also be disrupted by electromagnetic storms. And if that happens, then we don't get any positioning, navigation, or timing. Our cell phones don't work, the navigation systems on our cars don't work, and if we get any money out of an ATM, it does not have a time stamp. Well, this matters because these days, ever since the positioning, navigation, and timing systems got put in place, the economy depends on PNT, positioning, navigation, and timing. It depends on these satellites, and we need to figure out what a backup is. I don't know if any of you are in the farming area. Do any of you do agriculture or know anyone who is in agriculture? Yes. Well, tractors these days have GPS on them. They put the seed in a particular place, and they water and they fertilize the seed in that particular place. They don't just scatter seeds. Fertilizer and water are all over. If we look at pilots receive GPS signals. In fact, Ursula von der Leyen's plane got hacked as it was coming into Bulgaria. We have construction systems now that use digital blueprints. I don't know if any of you are in construction. Well, the construction area, instead of just having a blueprint and you hammer in a nail where it says on the digital blueprint, nowadays there's GPS where it tells you precisely where to put in that nail. That reduces the error rate of these construction projects. Well, recently, in case you think that I've been making this up, there are a lot of reports about how Russia and Ukraine are jamming their systems themselves in their own wars. There have been examples here with a driver going past Newark Airport that all of a sudden jammed the GPS because he wanted to go see his girlfriend during the lunch hour and he didn't want his wife to know. So at Liberty Airport, they found that around lunchtime, their GPS for their planes was going out, and it turns out that a jammer was going by precisely because on the same route every day he wanted to visit his girlfriend. In 2019, there was a British ship. I'm sure many of you remember, the Sterna Imperial. It was hacked by Iran. The ship thought it was in international waters. In fact, it was in Iranian waters. The Iranians picked up the ship. Well, these days we have even more vulnerability to GPS. It used to be, many of you might remember, that taxi drivers knew the way to go without looking at navigation systems. In London, the taxi drivers would have to pass a test, so they would have to find their way anywhere in London. The same with truck drivers. These days, you could be an Uber driver. You could be an Uber driver. Anyone could be an Uber driver. All you need is the cell phone. But that means that we have a lot of capability that is not being backed up. We have a lot of people who are depending on the technology for their jobs, whether it's a truck driver, taxi driver, construction worker. And so to have the system go down is a lot more dangerous than it could have been 20 years ago. Well, when I worked as Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Transportation Department, I had a lot of things to do, but my most important job was backing up GPS, because the Transportation Department is the U.S. government entity that is responsible for backing up the global positioning system for civilians. That's people like you. And then DoD is responsible for backing it up for the military. And there are a number of technologies that we tested. We tested about 20 different technologies. We published a big report in January 2021 that you can still find online. We identified technologies that could be used, but the federal government hasn't appropriated any funds for these, so the United States is still in a very vulnerable position. There have been more technologies found recently. There's one called Turn AI, which puts a navigation system basically in your car. It's a very sophisticated map of the Earth's surface, so that with the motion of the Earth's sensors can tell you where you are going. This is very inexpensive. It costs $50 to $100. Full disclosure, I'm on their advisory board. It's very popular because you would never get lost. And there are auto companies such as GM looking at it. There are fleets such as FedEx. FedEx does not want all its trucks to get lost on the road if the Chinese take out our satellites. So they are instituting it in their trucks. Amazon is interested because they want to reduce the error rate of their drivers. So that's one example of a very cost-effective technology. And then for timing, there's a great technology called Hoptron that uses atomic clocks. So instead of using the satellites for timing, it uses atomic clocks. Well, this needs coordination between different countries. You are parliamentarians, many of you are parliamentarians. I can assure you that if you go home and you talk to people in your home countries, in your governments, and you ask them what would happen if the navigation system went out, they would say it cannot go out. It's just there, it's free. But these things can go out. They're dependent on systems of satellites that can be taken down, and it's up to people such as yourselves to be figuring out what to do to back it up. And in private companies such as FedEx, Amazon, GM, they can put it in their vehicles. But what about ambulances? What about fire trucks? What about police officers? If these systems go down, the government vehicles, the municipal vehicles need to know where to go. The days of reading maps and people who can read maps are over now. Nowadays, if the government provides a free technology like GPS, it needs to be backed up for common safety systems. So we need to make sure that that this is done. With that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I was curious about our GPS system. How vulnerable really is it for aircraft and the like?
Well, that's a great question, and then that in fact came up about in December 2021 when the FAA decided that telecom towers were too close to airports because they had just moved into a different radio frequency band that they thought would be interfering with the global positioning system. The FAA said that certain flights could only operate visually and could not rely on GPS. And when that happened, these telecom companies scaled back the power in certain towers that were near airports. So GPS is subject to interference. The Federal Aviation Administration makes sure that it isn't, and that our planes fly safely. But this takes a certain amount of surveillance. There was another company called Legato that was going to put itself right next to the GPS band, was also going to have the effect of interfering with GPS. And there was big discussions at the Federal Communications Commission whether this firm, Legato, should be allowed to operate in that particular space. And that went on for years and years and years. So in general, the FAA make sure that all the planes fly safely. Sometimes the FAA has to tell planes not to fly using GPS at certain times, and then this sort of problem is worked out. Any more questions? All right, well, thank you very much.